The mysterious knocking sounds in space. Yang Liwei's encounter, when Yang Liwei became the first astronaut launched into space by China aboard the Shenzhou 5 mission in 2003, the event was hailed as a monumental achievement. China officially joined the exclusive club of nations capable of independently launching humans into space, following the United States and Russia. Yet amid the pride and celebration came a chilling and unresolved anomaly, one that Yang himself reported upon his return. During his solo mission, orbiting Earth, Yang heard strange knocking sounds coming from the spacecraft's exterior. Described as if someone were knocking on a metallic door, the noise baffled him. It wasn't coming from inside, but neither could it be traced to an external source. There was nothing visible through the portal. The incident unsettled him enough to report it as soon as he landed. What followed was a wave of scientific speculation, debate and mystery that has yet to be fully resolved. Initially, experts proposed rational explanations. One theory from Professor Goh Jia Heng of the National University of Singapore suggested space debris might have collided with the capsule. However, the spacecraft's exterior showed no damage or impact markings. Another theory from engineer Wei Sang-soo proposed thermal expansion and contraction of the spacecraft's hull. As it traverses from the scorching exposure of the sun to the frigid darkness of space, rapid temperature shifts could cause structural components to shift or pop. While this seems plausible, what complicates the issue is that similar knocking sounds were reported by astronauts on subsequent Chinese missions in 2005 and 2008, suggesting this wasn't an isolated anomaly. The persistence of these sounds across missions raised questions about the integrity or design of China's spacecraft. Could it be a manufacturing quirk, a previously unnoticed physical phenomenon, or something far stranger? While many people assume space to be completely silent, given the absence of a medium like air to carry sound, astronauts have reported hearing noises through structural vibrations transmitted via the ship's hull. The U.S. also documented strange auditory anomalies during early space exploration. Notably, the Apollo 10 astronauts described space music while orbiting the far side of the moon out of contact with Earth. That recording, kept classified for decades, was later declassified, adding credibility to accounts like Yang's. Still, some theories go beyond physics and engineering. Fringe speculations suggest the possibility of extraterrestrial contact, perhaps something or someone knocking with purpose. Yang, who later rose to the rank of Major General in China's Air Force, has never encountered similar sounds in any other context and maintains that the origin remains unknown. To this day, no consensus has emerged, and the mystery remains one of the most unsettling anecdotes from China's early space program. Whether it was a quirk of temperature, a hidden flaw in engineering, or a brush with the unknown, the knocking in space remains an eerie reminder that not everything in the cosmos is within our grasp to explain. Story Musgrave and the Rubbery Snake. In space. Among the elite class of astronauts who have ventured into the vastness of space, Dr. Story Musgrave stands as a unique figure, not only for his academic accomplishments and numerous space flights, but also for the deeply mysterious and controversial experiences he reported while orbiting the Earth. Born in 1935 in Stockbridge, Massachusetts, Musgrave defied expectations by rising from a troubled and abusive childhood to become a decorated NASA astronaut physician and the holder of 6 academic degrees. By the time of his final flight in 1996, He had become the second astronaut ever to complete 6 space missions. But perhaps more fascinating than his impressive resume is a bizarre story he has repeated several times over the years, his encounter with what he described as a snake-like creature in space. Musgrave's first sighting of this unidentified object took place during one of his early space missions. He claimed to have seen a long, white, flexible, undulating object drifting near the spacecraft. Describing it as a rubbery snake measuring between 6 and 8 feet, he said the object appeared to move with a fluid, wave-like motion, almost as if swimming through space. The way it reflected sunlight made it appear glossy or translucent. According to Musgrave, this was no fleeting moment. The object followed the spacecraft for an extended period, dancing and gliding on the vacuum beyond Earth's atmosphere. NASA, ever cautious and grounded in conventional explanations, suggested that the object might have been debris, perhaps a piece of insulation or an uncritical rubber seal from the shuttle's engines. Musgrave himself acknowledged this possibility, noting that space missions do release various materials. However, he remained unconvinced that the explanation was sufficient, especially given the motion and persistence of the object. What particularly intrigued him was the object's apparent autonomy, as if it were aware of and reacting to the spacecraft's movements. He observed its behavior on more than one occasion, reinforcing his belief that there was something unexplained going on. What makes Musgrave's account especially provocative is that he is not easily dismissed as a conspiracy theorist or eccentric. His scientific background and methodical thinking lend weight to his observations. Over time, Musgrave grew more vocal about his belief in extraterrestrial life. He stated in interviews that the sheer scale and complexity of the universe made it inconceivable that humans are alone. His time in space, where he witnessed countless phenomena invisible from Earth, only deepened this conviction. In his own words, "The more you fly in space, the more you see things that cannot be explained." Though Musgrave retired from NASA and public life, his testimony continues to stir interest and debate. Was the space snake a hallucination brought on by the intense isolation and sensory stress of space travel? Or did Musgrave, among the most educated astronauts in history, genuinely encounter something beyond our scientific understanding? Whatever the answer, his story serves as a reminder that despite our advancements, space remains a realm full of unknowns where not everything can be classified, labeled, or neatly explained away. As humanity prepares to travel deeper into the cosmos, Musgrave's snake lingers in the imagination, a silent serpentine symbol of the mysteries still lurking just beyond our reach. A 13-year-old discovers a lost car and body in Griffin Lake. In August 2019, a routine summer activity led to a chilling discovery that would unravel a nearly 30-year-old mystery. Griffin Lake, nestled among the scenic wilderness of British Columbia, Canada, was the picture of serene beauty, an idyllic setting for outdoor recreation. 13-year-old Max Werenka, an adventurous teen from Alberta, was spending time at the lake with his family paddleboarding and capturing footage with his GoPro. The waters of the lake shimmered with clarity, but something unusual caught Max's eye, a dark shape beneath the surface. As he drifted closer, he realized he was staring at what appeared to be the roof of a submerged car. Perplexed, Max alerted nearby adults, and soon a small crowd had gathered to assess the object. Shiny reflections from the vehicle's body could be seen beneath the water, raising questions about how a car could have ended up at the bottom of a seemingly peaceful lake. Initially, speculation turned to a known incident in 2007 when a vehicle had plunged into the lake and its occupants had been rescued. It seemed plausible that this might be the same car forgotten in the depths. However, Max and his family weren't satisfied with assumptions. They reported the sighting to the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, RCMP, who agreed to investigate further. When officers arrived, however, visibility conditions were not favorable, and they struggled to locate the submerged vehicle. That's when Max, already familiar with diving in the lake, volunteered to help. He dove into the cold waters armed with his GoPro camera and filmed the eerie, moss-covered vehicle resting on the lake bed. The footage confirmed the car's presence and revealed something far more disturbing. A skeletal figure was visible in the driver's seat. This discovery drastically changed the nature of the investigation. The car was not from 2007, but from a much older, unsolved case. Police divers were quickly dispatched, and the car was eventually recovered from the lake. Inside, they found the remains of Janet Farris, a woman who had gone missing in 1992 while driving to a wedding in the region. For nearly 3 decades, her family had no idea what had happened to her, only that she had vanished without a trace. Authorities concluded that there was no evidence of foul play. Most likely, Janet had swerved to avoid an animal or obstacle and accidentally plunged into the lake, where the car remained hidden due to the lake's murky depth and secluded nature. This extraordinary discovery brought long overdue closure to Janet Farris's family, who expressed gratitude toward Max Warenka for his role in solving the mystery. What started as an innocent paddleboarding outing turned into a real-life detective story, proving that sometimes even the most ordinary people can stumble upon the most extraordinary secrets. Max's quiet courage and presence of mind led to the resolution of a case that had haunted a family for decades, reminding us that even in the vast wilderness, the truth eventually surfaces, sometimes through the lens of a teenager's camera. The mud-wrapped Egyptian mummy. The image of a wrapped Egyptian mummy lying in a sarcophagus adorned with golden masks and precious amulets is deeply embedded in popular imagination. Yet not all ancient Egyptian burials followed the same opulent rituals reserved for the wealthy elite. A remarkable archaeological discovery, however, has challenged what we thought we knew about ancient mummification practices, revealing an obscure and possibly improvised technique that uses something as humble as dried mud. This singular case of a mummy, estimated to date back to around 1200 BCE, was discovered to be wrapped not only in linen, but also encased in a carefully applied layer of mud. The implications of this finding could rewrite our understanding of burial customs for non-royal individuals in ancient Egypt. The mummy, which underwent advanced CT scanning and detailed forensic analysis, presented a striking anomaly. Between its linen wrappings was a hardened mud shell, a material never before documented in Egyptian preservation techniques. At first, researchers were perplexed. Why would someone cover a mummified body in dried mud? As they examined the structure more closely, a potential explanation began to emerge. It appeared that the body had suffered damage, possibly from grave robbers who fractured its legs. In ancient Egyptian belief, the physical integrity of the body was essential for ensuring the soul's well-being in the afterlife. A damaged or broken body could hinder the deceased's journey to the next world. The mud then might have served a dual purpose. It repaired the physical form and mimicked the resin layers typically used by wealthier Egyptians. Resin was expensive and often inaccessible to lower-status individuals, yet mud was abundant and malleable. The application of the mud showed a surprising degree of care and precision. While it formed a thick layer several centimeters over the damaged legs, it was applied more delicately across the rest of the body, including a thin 1.5 millimeter coating over the face. Even more intriguing, the facial area of the mud casing was painted with white and red pigments made from limestone and mineral-based colors. This mimicked the appearance of the ornate funerary masks used in elite burials. Such details suggest the family or community of the deceased was attempting to imitate higher status burial customs within their means. This act of devotion underscores how deeply the values of social status and spiritual continuity were intertwined in Egyptian society. The mud shell may have functioned not just as a physical repair, but as a symbolic one, restoring not only the body, but also the dignity of the deceased in death. Yet despite these promising theories, many questions remain. Who was this individual? Were they a member of a poorer class attempting to emulate elite rituals, or perhaps someone of higher status from a region with limited access to traditional embalming materials? Until more mummies with similar characteristics are discovered, this singular case remains a compelling enigma. Still, it highlights how even the simplest materials, when guided by spiritual belief and love, can become part of a sacred ritual. The mud-wrapped mummy serves as a quiet but powerful reminder that devotion transcends wealth, and that even in antiquity, people found creative ways to honor the dead and safeguard their passage into eternity. Ice core evidence for Joseph's biblical famine. For centuries, the biblical story of Joseph has been cherished as a profound tale of divine providence and human resilience. According to the book of Genesis, Joseph, the favored son of Jacob, rose from slavery and imprisonment in Egypt to become Pharaoh's trusted advisor, guiding the kingdom through 7 years of plenty, followed by 7 years of famine. While often regarded as a symbolic narrative meant to teach spiritual lessons, new geological findings suggest that the story may be rooted in historical truth. In particular, scientific evidence extracted from the ice cores of Mount Kilimanjaro has opened the door to a fascinating convergence of scripture and science. Mount Kilimanjaro, located in present-day Tanzania, is not only Africa's tallest peak, but also a key source of water for the Nile River, the lifeline of ancient Egypt. In a groundbreaking study, scientists analyzed ancient ice cores extracted from the mountain and discovered evidence of a massive and prolonged drought that occurred approximately 600 years ago. This period aligns remarkably well with the estimated time of Joseph's rise to power in Egypt, as inferred from biblical chronologies and other ancient records. The ice cores revealed a clear period of significantly reduced precipitation, suggesting environmental conditions that would have led to widespread crop failure, water scarcity, and famine across northeastern Africa. This discovery gives new credibility to the account of 7 years of abundance followed by 7 years of hardship, which Joseph interpreted from Pharaoh's dreams. Even more astonishing is the evidence of advanced irrigation and water management systems constructed around that time to combat the effects of drought. One such structure is an ancient canal system whose Arabic name has survived through oral tradition, Bahr Yusuf, or the Waterway of Joseph. This network of canals played a critical role in diverting Nile waters to agricultural areas, sustaining food production during the famine. While it cannot be definitively proven that Joseph was the engineer behind it, the coincidence of its name and functionality has intrigued both historians and theologians. In addition to the ice core data, and the canal archaeological research has uncovered records of administrative grain storage and distribution systems that suggest centralized planning during this era. These logistical efforts mirror the biblical description of Joseph storing surplus grain during the years of abundance to prepare for the coming drought. Some scholars remain cautious, suggesting that such similarities could result from later historical reinterpretations of older myths or oral traditions. Nevertheless, the mounting physical and environmental evidence continues to spark interest in the historical plausibility of the story. While no Egyptian records from this time mention a figure explicitly named Joseph, it is not uncommon for foreigners, particularly those who began as slaves, to be left out of royal inscriptions. What makes the story of Joseph even more compelling is the universal message embedded within it of foresight, forgiveness, and the triumph of spirit over adversity. That a modern scientific tool like ice core analysis might corroborate elements of an ancient biblical tale invites us to reconsider the boundaries between faith and fact. Whether Joseph was a literal historical figure or a composite symbol of wise governance, the echoes of his story now resound not only in Scripture, but in the frozen archives of Earth's climatic history. Hidden Teotihuacan, pyramid beneath Tikal. In the dense jungles of Guatemala, the ancient Maya city of Tikal has long been a subject of fascination for archaeologists and historians alike. Once a thriving urban center between 200 and 850 AD, Tikal boasted monumental architecture, intricate hieroglyphic inscriptions, and a rich ceremonial culture. For decades, scholars speculated that Tikal may have had some form of contact with Teotihuacan, a powerful civilization located over 800 miles away in central Mexico. While evidence such as imported ceramics and stylistic influences hinted at a cultural relationship, a recent discovery has shaken the foundations of Mesoamerican history. Using LiDAR light detection and ranging technology, archaeologists uncovered a hidden pyramid buried beneath an unassuming hill in Tikal, one that bore all the hallmarks of Teotihuacan architecture rather than the typical Maya style. This buried structure was a revelation, unlike the stepped pyramids and ceremonial plazas characteristic of Maya cities. The newly revealed pyramid mirrored the architectural patterns of Teotihuacan's citadel complex. Its layout, construction materials, and orientation all aligned with Teotihuacan norms. Further excavation brought even more compelling evidence to light darts made of green obsidian, a volcanic glass commonly used by Teotihuacan warriors, and artisans were found within the structure. Since green obsidian was primarily sourced from deposits near Teotihuacan and tightly controlled its presence in Tikal, signified more than just trade, it pointed to direct contact or even occupation. Perhaps most intriguing was the discovery of funerary objects and symbolic artifacts associated with Teotihuacan's rain god Tlaloc, a deity absent from traditional Maya pantheons. The burial practices within the structure also echoed Teotihuacan customs, including the positioning of bodies and offerings which deviated from Maya traditions. These findings challenge long-standing assumptions about the independence of Maya city-states and suggest that Tikal may have once been a satellite or outpost of the Teotihuacan Empire. Historical records etched on stelae in Tikal had already noted a major turning point in the city's history around 378 AD, when a figure named Fire is Born arrived from the west and initiated a new political order. Previously considered a legend or symbolic myth, this record now gains new credibility. The newly discovered pyramid could well represent the physical manifestation of that historical shift the moment Teotihuacan influence took root in the heart of the Maya world. The implications of this discovery extend beyond regional politics. It suggests a much broader level of intercivilizational interaction in ancient Mesoamerica than previously believed. Far from being isolated entities, these advanced societies may have formed alliances, vassal states, or even colonial enterprises. In fact, around the same time the Tikal Pyramid was built, a neighborhood in Teotihuacan decorated in elaborate Maya-style murals was mysteriously destroyed. Some researchers speculate that a diplomatic rupture or failed alliance may have led to conflict and occupation, which now leaves its physical trace beneath the jungle floor. Thanks to the power of modern technology, we are beginning to uncover truths long buried beneath the surface, quite literally. This pyramid stands not only as a testament to architectural ambition, but also as a silent witness to ancient geopolitics and cross-cultural entanglements. The hidden structure at Tikal reveals that the ancient world was far more interconnected, complex, and dynamic than we once imagined, and that history still hides many secrets waiting patiently beneath layers of time and earth. Our Lady of the Pillar, Marian Apparition in Spain. Among the many stories of divine visitations and miracles in Christian history, the legend of Our Lady of the Pillar stands out not only for its antiquity, but for its mystical uniqueness. According to Catholic tradition, the Virgin Mary appeared in the city of Zaragoza, ancient Caesar Augusta, Spain, in 40 AD, while she was still alive and residing in Jerusalem. This appearance, considered the earliest known Marian apparition, is unlike most others because it did not occur posthumously or through visions, but rather through a miraculous event known as bilocation. Mary's spiritual and bodily presence in two places at once. As the story goes, she appeared to St. James the Greater, one of the 12 apostles who was evangelizing the Iberian Peninsula at the time. Despondent and discouraged by his lack of success, James prayed by the Ebro River, and it was there that Mary appeared atop a marble pillar, accompanied by a host of angels. The event is said to have restored James's faith and energized his mission, reaffirming the purpose of his calling. Mary's message, though brief, was powerful. She encouraged James to persevere and assured him that his work would bear fruit. As a lasting sign of her presence, she left behind the pillar which would become a sacred relic and the foundation of the shrine that still stands today, the Basilica of Our Lady of the Pillar. This site would go on to become one of the most important Marian pilgrimage destinations in the Catholic world. The notion of bilocation, while mystifying, is not foreign to mystical Christian traditions, particularly within the lives of saints and mystics who are believed to have appeared in two places at once during moments of intense spiritual transcendence. In this context, Mary's bilocation to Zaragoza affirms not only her sanctity, but also her divine ability to guide and console in real time, regardless of physical constraints. The tradition holds that Mary stood atop the pillar, a column of jasper, and requested that a church be built on the site in her honor. This pillar, now encased in bronze and venerated beneath the basilica's altar, is still the centerpiece of devotion for pilgrims. What is particularly fascinating is the early evidence of Marian devotion in the region. Roman-era tombs in Zaragoza contain iconography that scholars believe reference the apparition predating many other well-known Marian cults. However, the popularization of the shrine and its image surged centuries later. In 1434, after a fire destroyed the original altarpiece, the church replaced it with a sculptural depiction of the apparition, formalizing its place in Spanish Catholic identity. Papal recognition followed. Pope Calixtus III granted indulgences to pilgrims, and in 1905 Pope Pius X officially crowned the statue of Our Lady of the Pillar, further affirming its significance. The story of Our Lady of the Pillar is more than just a tale of supernatural wonder. It's a deeply rooted symbol of perseverance in faith. For Spain, it is both a spiritual cornerstone and a cultural heritage. Whether one interprets the event as literal history, spiritual metaphor, or symbolic myth, the legend continues to inspire millions. It reminds believers that even in moments of despair, divine grace can appear unexpectedly, miraculously, and with lasting purpose, offering not only comfort but a clear pillar upon which to rebuild faith. Mungo Man and a Mungo Woman, Australia's oldest human remains. In the vast arid expanse of southeastern Australia lies the dry bed of what was once Lake Mungo, a now evaporated basin that forms part of the Willandra Lakes World Heritage Area. Though desolate today, this landscape holds within it the secrets of an ancient world, a time when Indigenous Australians lived hunted and thrived by the water's edge. In 1968, geologist Jim Bowler of the University of Melbourne uncovered a groundbreaking find: the cremated remains of a woman who would later be known as Mungo Woman. Radiocarbon dating revealed that she had lived around 40,000 years ago, making her the earliest known example of a ritual cremation in human history. Just a few years later, in 1974, Bowler unearthed another set of remains, Mungo Man, whose skeleton was also dated to approximately the same period. These two discoveries revolutionized the understanding of human history, not only in Australia, but across the globe. The Mungo woman's cremation was particularly astonishing. Her remains had been burned, crushed, and carefully buried, a ritualistic practice that demonstrated not only emotional depth and cultural sophistication, but also spiritual belief. Until then, it was widely assumed that such complex funerary traditions had only emerged in later civilizations. Mungo Woman shattered that notion, providing solid proof that early Australians were engaged in ceremonial practices tens of thousands of years ago. She represents the earliest known evidence of such behavior anywhere in the world. Mungo Man, discovered nearby, offered equally profound insights. His body had been carefully positioned on his side, with hands folded in his lap, and he was sprinkled with red ochre, a natural pigment often associated with symbolic rites. This was the earliest known use of ochre in burial, suggesting a long-standing spiritual tradition among early Aboriginal Australians. Unlike Mungo Woman, Mungo Man's body had not been cremated but rather laid to rest, with deliberate intention, which may suggest varying cultural practices across gender status or time. These ancient individuals were not isolated anomalies. Further archaeological work at Lake Mungo has uncovered fireplaces, stone tools, middens of discarded food, and even fossilized footprints preserved in the clay-rich soil and dated to 20,000 years ago. These tracks form the largest collection of Pleistocene human footprints in the world and provide a unique glimpse into the lives, movements, and possibly even social interactions of the ancient Willandra people. They show families walking together, children darting ahead and others dragging sticks or tools through the mud, preserving a moment in prehistory, like a snapshot. Beyond their archaeological significance, Mungo Man and Mungo Woman have also become potent symbols of indigenous heritage and identity. Their discovery affirms the deep-rooted continuous presence of Aboriginal Australians on the continent for at least 50,000 years, far earlier than European settlement narratives had acknowledged. This has reinforced Indigenous land claims and cultural recognition, reminding modern Australia that its true history begins not with colonization, but with the oldest living culture on Earth. The remains were returned to Indigenous custodians in recent years, a move seen as both symbolic and necessary. For the Pakanchi, Muti Muti, and Ngiam-Pa, peoples descendants of those ancient souls, Mungo Man and Mungo Woman are not just relics, but ancestors. Their presence in the desert is not merely scientific, it is spiritual. Their bones tell stories science alone cannot fully decode. They whisper of ancient fires, sacred rituals, and a life lived in harmony with the land. In this way, they remain eternal guardians of memory, witnesses to the dawn of humanity, and silent keepers of Australia's deepest truths. Organic material and methane on Mars. The search for life beyond Earth has long captured the imagination of scientists and dreamers alike. Mars, with its cold deserts, towering volcanoes, and ancient riverbeds, has been one of the most promising candidates for harboring life, or at least having done so in the distant past. In a significant breakthrough, NASA's Curiosity rover discovered preserved organic molecules in 3-billion-year-old sedimentary rocks on Mars, alongside fluctuating levels of methane in the Martian atmosphere. While not definitive proof of life, these findings mark some of the strongest evidence yet that Mars may once have been habitable and possibly still holds secrets beneath its red surface. The term organic molecules refers to compounds primarily made of carbon and hydrogen, often with additional elements like oxygen, nitrogen, or sulfur. On Earth, such molecules form the basis of life. The discovery of these compounds on Mars embedded in rocks believed to have formed in ancient lake beds suggests that the red planet once had the chemical ingredients necessary for life. However, NASA scientists were quick to caution that organic material can form through both biological and non-biological processes. It might be the residue of ancient microbial life, or it could be the product of volcanic activity, meteor impacts, or other geological mechanisms. What adds to the mystery is the presence of seasonal methane variations. Over the course of several Martian years, roughly equivalent to 6 Earth years, NASA observed that methane levels rise and fall with the changing seasons. This pattern was first detected by the sample analysis at Mars SAM instrument aboard Curiosity. On Earth, a significant portion of atmospheric methane is produced by living organisms, particularly microbes. This has led some researchers to speculate whether something similar could be occurring on Mars, perhaps subsurface microbial life that becomes more active during certain times of the year. Other scientists, however, offer more conservative explanations. The methane could result from chemical reactions between water and rock beneath the Martian surface. Even if the methane is not biologically produced, the mere fact that it fluctuates regularly is exciting. It suggests an active planet, geologically or otherwise. And when combined with the discovery of organic compounds, it paints a picture of a world that may once have had stable lakes, a thicker atmosphere, and a more temperate climate. In fact, past conditions on Mars may have been strikingly similar to early Earth. If life ever existed on Mars, it likely would have originated billions of years ago, when the planet was warmer and wetter. If it still exists today, it might be hidden in protected pockets beneath the surface, safe from the harsh radiation and frigid temperatures above. NASA's researchers, including Dr. Jennifer Eigenbrode, emphasize the importance of these findings not just for Mars, but for understanding planetary evolution in general. As she put it, these organic molecules could be remnants of ancient life, a food source for life, or simply something that existed independently of life. Regardless, their presence helps us better understand the chemical environment of early Mars, making future missions like the Mars Sample Return Project and ESA's ExoMars rover even more critical. In a broader sense, these discoveries reignite the age-old question: are we alone in the universe? Mars continues to whisper tantalizing clues, pushing the boundaries of what we know and what we hope to find. It may not yet offer definitive answers, but its voice is growing louder, and with every sample collected, every gas measured, and every molecule analyzed, we come one step closer to uncovering the truth. Whether Mars once teemed with life or merely had the right ingredients, one thing is clear: it was and perhaps still is a world worth exploring. Rongo Rongo, the undeciphered script of Easter Island. Far out in the vastness of the Pacific Ocean lies one of humanity's most isolated and enigmatic places, Easter Island, or Rapa Nui. Known around the world for its colossal stone statues, the Moai the island is also home to another far less understood mystery, an ancient and undeciphered writing system known as Rongo Rongo. Discovered in the 19th century, this unique script has puzzled linguists, anthropologists, and historians for generations. It is one of only a handful of independently developed writing systems in human history, yet its meaning remains lost and its origin shrouded in uncertainty. The story of Rongo Rongo begins in 1864 when Catholic missionaries arrived on the island and came across wooden tablets, staffs, and other artifacts, etched with a strange system of glyphs. At first glance, they appeared decorative, but further inspection revealed repeating patterns and formal structure, strong indications of a writing system. The glyphs included depictions of humans, animals, geometric shapes, and local flora. What made them particularly remarkable was their precision. Each symbol was typically just 1 centimeter high, and their orientation followed a distinctive pattern known as reverse boustrophodon, where lines alternated in direction and had to be read in a zigzag motion with glyphs flipped upside down on every other line. The carvings themselves were often made on driftwood, sometimes believed to be reused from shipwrecks and likely etched with sharpened obsidian or shark teeth. Some tablets were inscribed on both sides, and the glyphs were sometimes so tightly spaced that they formed rows of uninterrupted information. The largest collection of these glyphs appears on 26 irregular wooden tablets, which were eventually spread across various museums around the world, making comprehensive analysis even more difficult. Despite over 150 years of study, Rongo Rongo remains undeciphered. Unlike the Rosetta Stone, which helped unlock the secrets of Egyptian hieroglyphs by providing a known translation in Greek, no bilingual text or cultural key exists for Rapa Nui's script. The island's oral tradition had largely disappeared by the time Westerners began studying the glyphs, due in large part to colonial disruption, forced relocations, disease, and cultural erasure. The collapse of Rapa Nui society in the 17th century likely contributed to the script's abandonment as knowledge transmission across generations was interrupted. Some researchers argue that Rongo Rongo might not be a full writing system, but a form of proto-writing symbols used to convey information calendars or religious rituals without representing full language structures. Others believe it may encode chants, genealogies, or astronomical data potentially tied to the island's Birdman cult or seasonal events. Statistical analyses suggest that the script contains repeated syntactic patterns, which could imply grammatical structure, but without knowing the underlying spoken language or having contextual translations, decipherment remains elusive. The mystery of Rongo Rongo is not just academic, it is deeply symbolic. It represents a cultural treasure lost to time, colonization, and neglect. For the Rapa Nui people, reclaiming and understanding their ancestral script is part of a broader effort to revive a nearly forgotten legacy and reassert their identity. Efforts are now underway to use digital imaging AI and collaborative linguistics to examine the surviving tablets in greater detail. In the end, Rongo Rongo reminds us that history is filled with voices waiting to be heard, messages carved into wood, etched into stone, or buried beneath earth and memory. Whether it was a sacred script, a record-keeping tool, or an artistic tradition, Rongo Rongo offers a tantalizing glimpse into a civilization that once flourished in profound isolation and still whispers to us across centuries of silence. The disappearing lake in Antarctica. In one of the most remote and inhospitable regions on Earth, a vast lake in East Antarctica stunned scientists by vanishing virtually overnight. This was not a trick of perception or a seasonal phenomenon. It was a monumental event recorded by satellite imagery showing that a massive body of water had seemingly disappeared without warning. Known as a supraglacial lake, the body of water sat atop the Ameri ice shelf and contained between 600 and 750 million cubic meters of water, more than Sydney Harbour. When the ice melted during the Antarctic summer of 2019, researchers were able to observe the lake more clearly. Then, just as quickly, it was gone. The scale of the disappearance was extraordinary. This lake, frozen over for most of its life, had drained away in a matter of days. To make sense of the mystery, scientists turned to satellite data, particularly from NASA's ICESat-2 and historical imagery, to pinpoint when the event occurred. The before and after shots confirmed that the lake had emptied entirely over a short time frame. But where did all the water go? And how could such a massive drainage event have happened without leaving behind a clear explanation? The prevailing theory revolves around a process known as hydrofracturing. As the lake filled with meltwater, the immense weight of the liquid put pressure on the ice shelf beneath. Over time, this stress likely caused a crack or fissure to form. Once that fracture reached deep enough into the ice, the water would have acted like a hydraulic drill, widening the gap and forcing its way downward. In effect, the entire lake likely drained into the ocean below, through a sudden and catastrophic collapse of the ice shelf floor, a phenomenon similar to draining a bathtub by removing the plug. Dr. Roland Warner, a lead researcher on the phenomenon, explained that the immense volume of water and the elevation of the lake intensified the pressure, accelerating the process. The result a 60-square-kilometer crater where the lake had once existed, now visibly deformed and layered with fractured ice. Interestingly, satellites detected the ice shelf lifting slightly after the drainage as the massive weight of the water was suddenly removed, much like a mattress decompressing after being freed from a heavy load. What makes this event even more alarming is the context in which it occurred. Climate models have projected that surface melting in Antarctica will double by 2050 due to global warming. Increased meltwater on the continent's ice shelves, especially in summer, creates greater opportunities for hydrofractures like this one. If more lakes begin to form and disappear in similar fashion, it could destabilize entire ice shelves, which act as barriers holding back massive inland glaciers. Once these shelves break apart, the land-based ice could slide into the ocean, drastically raising global sea levels. Since the lake's disappearance, researchers have observed it slowly beginning to refill. This could mean that the surface has refrozen, sealing off the fissure temporarily. However, it may only be a matter of time before the lake drains again. In a worst-case scenario, a cycle of repeated hydrofracturing could form a feedback loop that steadily weakens the structural integrity of the ice shelf. The vanishing of the Antarctic lake is more than a scientific oddity. It is a warning. It signals that Earth's cryosphere, its frozen regions, is dynamic, vulnerable, and already undergoing dramatic transformations. As satellite eyes continue watching from orbit, the planet's most secretive continent reminds us that even the coldest, most isolated places are not immune to the heat of a warming world. The vanishing of James and Pearl Tedford. Among the many chilling accounts of mysterious disappearances in American folklore, few are as unsettling and utterly inexplicable as the vanishing of James and Pearl Tedford. Their story emerges from the annals of early 20th century Vermont, a region already wrapped in an eerie reputation due to a stretch of wilderness dubbed the Bennington Triangle, where numerous people reportedly disappeared without a trace. But even among these strange tales, the Tedfords' case stands out not merely for its mystery, but for its double disappearance involving a husband and wife at two different times under uncanny circumstances. James Tedford was a veteran of World War II and a quiet man in his late 60s, known for his reclusive habits. He lived in a soldier's home in Bennington, Vermont, while his younger wife, Pearl, remained behind in their hometown of Franklin, Vermont. In 1941, James returned home after the war to find that Pearl had vanished. Neighbors reported that she had simply left their home one day and never returned. No signs of struggle were found, and none of her belongings were missing. She had simply disappeared. The police investigated, but nothing came of it. Some speculated she had run off with another man, but those who knew her insisted she was devoted to her husband and unlikely to abandon him without a word. Years later, in December 1949, James himself vanished in a manner even more perplexing. He had been visiting relatives in St. Albans and was returning to the soldiers' home in Bennington via a local bus. He boarded the bus and was seen by multiple passengers sitting quietly reading a timetable. Witnesses later confirmed that he was still on the bus at the final stop before Bennington. But when the bus arrived at its final destination, James was gone. His luggage remained on the rack above his seat, and the timetable he had been reading was still open on his seat cushion. There was no sign of struggle, and the bus had not made any unscheduled stops. He had simply vanished during a moving journey surrounded by witnesses, none of whom saw anything unusual. This strange case became part of the growing mythology surrounding the Bennington Triangle, a term coined by author Joseph A. Citro to describe the area encompassing Glastonbury Mountain and its surrounding wilderness. Between 1945 and 1950, at least 5 other people disappeared in this region under circumstances equally baffling. Some suggest there may be a natural explanation: dangerous terrain, sudden weather changes, or wild animals. Others believe these vanishings point to something more inexplicable: portals, time slips, or paranormal forces. The case of James and Pearl Tedford continues to baffle both skeptics and believers. The idea that 2 members of the same family could disappear under such mysterious and unrelated circumstances has led many to speculate about curses or supernatural influences. Yet no concrete evidence has ever been found to explain what happened to either of them. Were their disappearances mere coincidences, or were they caught up in something that defies our understanding of time and space? For some, the Tedford story is a haunting metaphor for the way people can slip through the cracks of society unnoticed and unremembered. For others, it's a warning that even in the most mundane settings, the world holds pockets of unexplainable darkness. And for a select few, it is proof that there are still mysteries out there that science, logic, and rationality cannot yet solve. The lost subterranean city of Derinkuyu. Beneath the arid landscape of Cappadocia, Turkey, lies a mystery as haunting as it is breathtaking, a subterranean city so vast and complex that it once housed thousands of people entirely underground. Known as Derinkuyu, this ancient city is not merely a collection of tunnels or caves. It is a fully realized underground metropolis, complete with living quarters, kitchens, wineries, wells, schools, churches, and even stables. Discovered in 1963 by a man renovating his basement, Derinkuyu's unearthing stunned the world and raised a perplexing question: who built this immense underground refuge, and why the city descends more than 280 feet, 85 meters into the earth, and includes 18 known levels, although only a fraction is currently open to the public. Archaeologists believe it could accommodate between 20,000 to 50,000 people, along with their livestock and food supplies. The structure is not crude or haphazard. It includes elaborate ventilation shafts, water systems, and rolling stone doors that could be sealed from the inside, suggesting a purpose far more serious than simple habitation. Derinkuyu was built to protect, not just to house. Scholars date the city's origins to at least the 8th century BCE, attributing the earliest phases to the Phrygians, a people known for their engineering prowess. Later, it was expanded by early Christians fleeing Roman persecution, who used its maze-like corridors and hidden passages to avoid capture. But even those theories fail to fully explain how such an advanced city was built, using ancient tools, and how its designers anticipated the many logistical challenges of surviving underground for extended periods. The architectural brilliance of Derinkuyu becomes even more apparent when one considers its ventilation system, which remains functional today. Hundreds of vertical shafts allow for airflow, regulating temperature and providing fresh air, even at the lowest levels. Wells were dug to tap into subterranean aquifers, ensuring access to clean drinking water, separate from surface-level contamination or enemies who might attempt poisoning. Food storage rooms were insulated from heat, keeping supplies fresh. Communal spaces such as chapels and schools indicate that life underground was not only possible, but organized and sustainable. But the greatest mystery may not be how it was built, but why. Some researchers suggest Derinkuyu was a refuge from marauding armies, while others propose it was built to survive natural disasters, such as volcanic eruptions or extreme climate shifts. More speculative theories abound. Some believe the city was designed to shield its inhabitants from a cataclysmic event or even contact with beings not of this world. Its defensive features, hidden entrances, thick stone barriers, and strategic dead ends seem over-engineered if merely intended for seasonal use. Equally fascinating is that Derinkuyu is not unique. The Cappadocia region contains over 200 underground settlements, many of which connect via tunnels stretching for miles. This suggests a shared knowledge of subterranean engineering among ancient Anatolian cultures, a knowledge that has been almost entirely lost. What motivated entire civilizations to move underground? What threat persisted over centuries and across empires that justified such drastic living conditions? Today, walking through Derinkuyu's narrow, dim corridors feels like entering a forgotten world, a realm of shadow silence and the eerie weight of human ingenuity shaped by desperation or foresight. For some, it's a marvel of ancient architecture. For others, it remains a riddle etched into volcanic rock. But whatever its origin or intent, Derinkuyu stands as a humbling reminder that long before modern society, people were already confronting their deepest fears and crafting solutions that defy the imagination of even today's engineers. The Green Children of Woolpit. In the heart of 12th century England, nestled in the quiet countryside of Suffolk, a tale emerged so bizarre that it has baffled historians, folklorists, and skeptics for centuries. The story of the Green Children of Woolpit is more than just a medieval curiosity. It is a window into the blurry boundary between folklore and historical record. According to chroniclers of the time, 2 children with green-tinted skin, speaking an unknown language and wearing strange clothing appeared out of nowhere near the village of Woolpit, and their mysterious presence raised questions that have never been fully answered. The account originates from 2 relatively reputable sources, Ralph of Coggeshall and William of Newburgh, both 12th century historians who wrote within a few decades of the event. According to their reports, villagers discovered a boy and a girl near the entrance to a wolf pit, from which Woolpit derives its name. The children were disoriented, frightened, and appeared malnourished. Most notably, their skin had a green hue like that of young leaves. The children were taken in by a local landowner, Sir Richard de Calne, and over time the girl began to learn English. Tragically, the boy died shortly after their arrival, reportedly due to illness brought on by malnutrition. The girl, however, adapted and eventually explained their origins. She claimed they came from a land called St. Martin's Land, where everything had a greenish cast. The people, the plants, even the light. They lived underground or in a dim twilight-like world, and only ended up in Woolpit after wandering into a long tunnel, while tending their father's flock, eventually emerging in the blinding light of the English countryside. As fantastic as this explanation sounds, it was recorded seriously by both chroniclers. Over the centuries, scholars and storytellers alike have proposed numerous interpretations of the tale. Some see it as a folk allegory, a morality tale cloaked in symbolism. Others consider it an exaggerated memory of real events, that the children were Flemish orphans who had fled war or persecution and became lost in the woods. The green hue of their skin could have resulted from hypochromic anemia, also known as green sickness, a condition caused by malnutrition and iron deficiency, explaining both their appearance and eventual recovery after being fed a normal diet. Still, there are aspects of the story that resist easy explanation. The children's language was said to be incomprehensible, not just foreign. Their clothing was unfamiliar in fabric and design, and the idea of an underground or twilight realm has fueled speculation among those who lean toward the paranormal. Could they have emerged from a subterranean civilization? Was St. Martin's Land an alternate dimension or a distorted memory of another place altogether? Over time, the green girl reportedly grew into adulthood, lost the green tint in her skin, and was said to have married a man from King's Lynn. Some accounts claim her name was Agnes, and that she continued to tell the story of her mysterious origins for the rest of her life, though no conclusive records confirm her later years. Whether one sees the Green Children of Woolpit as historical fact, distorted memory, symbolic folklore, or something far stranger, their story endures because it taps into a deep archetypal question. What if our world is not the only one? What if, from time to time, other realities bleed through just long enough to leave us with wonder, confusion, and an enduring sense of awe? Even today, Woolpit embraces its strange legacy, and the story of the Green Children remains one of England's most haunting and enigmatic tales. A final chapter in this series of unexplained mysteries that reminds us just how little we truly know about the world we inhabit.